Hi, I'm Gigi Duban, and on this episode of Alabama Inc., we're going to look at food trucks and how these meals on wheels are causing quite the fuss among cities and restaurants around the state. Also, Pat Duggins talks with Jeffrey Bear, the man behind the hugely successful shopping center, The Summit. And finally, correspondent Josh Sneed talks with a woman who dropped a lot of coin on, of all things, a vacuum cleaner. Find out how much she spent and why she'd do it again. All that's coming up on Alabama Inc. For years, people in Birmingham knew the taco truck as a no-frills way to get cheap, fast Mexican food on the street. And before that, there were hot dog carts. But here, like in other parts of the country, food trucks are taking on a whole new character. Look at Spoon-Fed Grill, which parks here at 5th Avenue and 20th Street in downtown Birmingham most mornings to prep for the lunchtime rush. Tell us who you are first, before I forget.
Who am I?
Who are you?
Well, I'm Michael Brandon. I'm chef of Spoon-Fed Grill. So I've cut my teeth in a lot of fine dining restaurants and decided I want to get out of the submarine and see the people I'm serving and be able to breathe some fresh air.
You're sort of in another kind of little submarine here.
I think so. It's kind of like my little sailboat.
But this sailboat is in unfamiliar waters, and it can be pretty rough. The food truck trend is just taking off here, and cities aren't sure how to handle it. So Brandon is treading water carefully.
We were new to the area. People weren't quite sure what is a food truck, how do we work with them. People definitely want to get to know you first. What is your product? Really, what's your personality that backs it up? I think we've got the food for sure, and hopefully the personality is there.
In some places, it's going to take a lot more than personality to get a foot in the door. Take Trussville, for example.
On a day-to-day basis, we have not allowed food trucks. The reasoning behind that has been that we have people who have invested in brick and mortar facilities that pay property taxes and on an ongoing basis have business licenses and sales taxes that they remit to the city.
Brandon says he'd love to eventually open a restaurant, just not now.
For people like myself and some of the other food trucks, we didn't have a ton of capital in the beginning to be able to invest that large amount of money. So we start small and we go big. It's the old way of business, right? Rather than taking out huge loans and then failing in the business, you start small and then you grow incrementally. So maybe we'll work our way into some of those empty buildings soon enough. I think that's the future of a lot of the trucks, is that we start in trucks and we end up going into some of these open spaces.
Operation New Birmingham is playing peacemaker. They're helping draft guidelines that would be fair to both restaurants and food trucks. If another restaurant wanted to move in right next door to another restaurant, both brick and mortar, there wouldn't be an issue with that.
Because the brick and mortar restaurateur would say that person is having to make the same sort of capital investment to be there. You know, the restaurant operators argue to some degree fairly that, you know, it's not an apples to apples situation.
To me, the brick and mortar store represents permanence and someone who has a personal investment in your city, where someone who comes in if it's pretty weather and I think people will be out today, I'll come out. But if it's rainy and I don't think I'll do as well today, then I won't. They're not vested in the community and not as likely to give back to the community as the brick and mortar people.
But at the same time, these food trucks have done a lot to elevate food in the community. I mean, it is usually very creative food going on in a lot of these food truck operations, and they're very popular with employees and employers. The 70,000 people that work in downtown every day, they want them. So we have to try to balance it.
Brandon says food trucks are an investment. They have to pay business license and permit fees. They pay for a health department permit. And in every municipality where they set up shop, they pay sales tax. Not to mention the cost of a truck.
You can start anywhere from just the truck on the lowest end of about $30,000, and then get a really good truck going. It's usually between $75,000 and $150,000.
That's much less than it would cost to open a brick and mortar place. But he says profits are uncertain.
First couple years in business, any business, and especially one where you're not really paving the way, you're cutting a new road. And in that process, we're paving the way for other people. You're an explorer, you got to see what's happening, and sometimes those explorers don't find their gold till 10 or 15 years later. That's not going to happen with us. They're coming, they're just slow to come.
On an average day, Brandon might serve 60 to 100 people at lunch.
Why would you come here over, any brick and mortar place around here?
Get to stand outside for a little while, outside of a dark, halogen lit office. It's just nice to stand outside, get a nice walk in, and get something a little different than most of the other restaurants around downtown.
We think that in Birmingham, there are about 9 or 10 licensed food trucks. And so cities are having to keep up, and it's not just Birmingham, it's everywhere.
And it really isn't just Birmingham. I mean, look at Chicago. They're right now considering an ordinance that would quadruple the fines for food trucks parking within 200 feet of a restaurant. It's not all bad, though. The law also would let food trucks get started earlier in the day, and it would let them keep serving food well into the night till 2 a.m. It seems there are always going to be those who feel like food trucks have an unfair advantage. Still, some communities have embraced food trucks, even capitalized on their popularity. City of Mountain Brook recently had a food truck roundup, a charity fundraiser. There was everything from fried fish to cupcakes. Since then, many more events like it followed in Birmingham. And judging by their success, it won't be the last of them. Coming up next on Alabama Inc.
I had no idea what this was going to really be like. I'd never done it before. We had never done it before as a company.
People who are successful at business will tell you there's no magic formula out there that takes them from here to there. Take Jeffrey Bayer, for example. This University of Alabama graduate combined his interest in civic planning with his knack for business, and then mixed it all together with his upbringing from his mother, who, by all accounts, was a pretty snappy dresser. The result of that was the Summit, a high-end fashion shopping mecca just outside of Birmingham, and that's where we met Jeffrey Bayer to talk about it. So Jeffrey, here we are, and just a few feet away are these big picture windows, and you've got this panoramic view of Saks Fifth Avenue, P.F. Chang's, that sort of thing. You know, when you bring people for business here, I'm assuming that's the kind of view that you really want them to see.
Yeah, I think this has turned out to be a real amenity for the city. I had no idea what this was going to really be like. I thought I knew, but I'd never done it before. We had never done it before as a company. But I sort of had a sense of what I thought shopping center development could perhaps move to and what people wanted. And I just sort of sensed that there was a need for a different kind of venue, and they had been produced around the country, a different format, and that Birmingham deserved it, and we were ready for it, and we were having to travel to other parts of the country to get it. So our mission became to bring those kind of retailers to Birmingham so people could enjoy it here in their home market without having to be forced to go somewhere else.
Well, before coming here, I lived in the Orlando area, and years ago, their big luxury mall was called Millennia, and they had like Tiffany and Neiman Marcus, all this sort of stuff. And even with Orlando's,
well, that's been within the last 5 or 6 years.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
But the point is, when it first came in, everybody they didn't care that it was like billions of dollars of tourist traffic and millions of people coming to Orlando. They said, a mall like this high-end stuff, there's no way it's going to work. When you first started saying, why don't we get Saks? What do you think like that? Did you get any opposition? Were people like, no way?
I think the skepticism was not Saks because they didn't come the first phase. They came the third phase, so probably 5, 6 years later, was it could an outdoor shopping center be successful when we had just been through 30 or 40 years of all retail development of this size was in enclosed malls. That's what the skepticism was, that we were crazy for putting it outdoors. So that was really the departure. And then it wasn't so much that it couldn't work, it was the format of it. And it all represents a different time frame. The first phase was opened in 97, the second came along in 2000, then 2003, then this was built in 2010, so it's evolved. And then it'll keep evolving because we'll make changes. We'll tear some things down, we'll rebuild, we'll go vertical. It'll continue to evolve.
So Jeffrey Bayer's putting together the summit. Now that means negotiating with small store owners and big store owners. Now the big stores, the anchor stores for the summit, include Gus Meyer, Saks Fifth Avenue, and perhaps most notably Belk. Now when Belk announced their interest in moving into the summit, you'd think someone like Bayer would just throw open their arms and welcome them. Well, Jeffrey Bayer did something a little bit different. He filed a lawsuit. Getting back to the summit for a second here, there was a pivotal moment. I mean, you were settling on your big anchor stores. And Belk department stores bought Parisian and said, hey, we're moving into the summit. And on the one hand, you might think, an owner of the project like this, hey, fantastic, come on in. You filed a lawsuit against Belk. What was the message you were trying to send?
We wanted to make certain that the quality level of the department store, which was key to the project, to be able to continue to attract the upscale specialty retailers, was maintained. I'm not blaming anybody now, and I'm not going back to rehash it, but we were not able to get the kind of communications we needed to make certain that we were going to be able to move forward with our business plan for the next 10, 15 years. It was a critical component. So unfortunately, we had to do that from our perspective. Belk was not happy, but what happened is that when we met with Tim Belk, who was not happy with us, we sat and we had dialogue, and he understood our concern, which we could have had that dialogue beforehand, but it didn't work out that way. But the upshot is that we were able to reach a cooperative agreement, and I would bet this store probably is one of their top 2 or 3 productive stores in their chain, and I think it's all worked out okay. And we have a very functional relationship with the Belk family now, and we're doing other projects with them. So it's all worked out okay.
At the time, any concern about you coming off a little bit like a hard nose, a little bit of elitist, that sort of?
I don't know, but I couldn't really worry about it. It was a very valuable asset. We felt we had to protect it, and I didn't like doing it. I was scared to death to do it. I mean, it was sort of like David and Goliath, and I certainly wasn't the Goliath. So I didn't like doing it, but we felt we had to do it to make it work. And all that I can think about now is that it worked out okay. Everybody's happy, and I think we're friends, and we're doing more business together. So it turned out to be the right thing to do.
With the state of the economy, a high-end market or a high-end mall rather, sort of has to roll with the punches and changes, and that's one of the things that you wanted to institute with the summit. Take us through that process.
To me, to create continual value in a retail environment, which to me is very organic. You can either make the decision to maintain the status quo and let it just run, or you can constantly be reinvesting capital to move tenants around, to bring in new tenants, to take tenants out that really don't fit, keep it fresh, keep it secure, have no deferred maintenance. It is an organic venue. You've got to constantly be recreating yourself. That's what we do. That's our attitude.
Without naming names, I mean, we talked earlier about, the situation with Bell, getting them all straightened out. Is there anybody who said, hey, we want to move into the Summit? You just said no.
Because we did not think that it really fit?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot. And people get mad at us. But we try to say to them, please don't, no disrespect intended, we just don't think it's consistent with the merchandising and the positioning of the asset. We've had some real knockdown drag-outs, but our opinion is we have to stay true to the cause. If we don't, we will lose our position. From our surveys, what we hear people want, Nordstrom, Trader Joe's, Crate and Barrel, there are others. So our mission is just to stay on top of what our surveys tell us, who's important, and then we go out and we solicit them. Some we'll get, some we won't, and just keep investing the capital. So there's more than just one or two as we go forward. And that's our mission. Keep it fresh, keep it current, keep it interesting so people will continue to come, and we can provide the fashion venue for the region. So that's our goal.
Jeffrey, thank you so much.
My pleasure, thank you.
Coming up next on Alabama Inc.
If one of your friends would have told you, I just spent $2,500 on a vacuum cleaner,
I would have said, you're crazy. You're crazy.
People can spend money on some pretty unique things. We all have our splurges, right? But sometimes you look at the things people buy and you wonder, why? Well, throughout the season, correspondent Josh Sneed is going to dive into the minds of consumers and answer exactly that question. It's the last segment on Alabama Inc., and it's one we like to call People Pay for That.
$2,500. How would you spend it? Maybe a couple round trip tickets to Hawaii, a down payment on a car, maybe even a huge flat screen television, like normal things, right? Well, for Amy Eifler Martin, it was none of that. She decided to spend it on a vacuum cleaner, yeah. And not just some of the money, she spent it all, $2,500. Now I'm gonna warn you before we go, you're probably never gonna look at your $100 vacuum cleaner again, and I'm sorry about that. So let's go check out the mother of all vacuum cleaners on this segment of People Pay for That.
Hello,
Amy.
Josh.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, come on in.
All right, thank you. Your place is very clean.
Well, thank you very much.
I think I know why. Amy, this was a pretty big purchase.
Huge.
Why a vacuum cleaner? It's a lot of money.
It's a lot. Well, I had 5 dogs, or I have 5 dogs.
5 dogs.
5 dogs. 4 dachshunds and a pug.
So which one of these guys is the worst offender with the hair?
It'd be Sammy, the pug.
Sammy right here?
She sheds like crazy. I wanted a vacuum cleaner that actually would clean my house because with 5 dogs, there was hair everywhere.
Right.
But I didn't really think I was gonna spend.
You went.
Yeah.
You went to the top.
I did.
So what was your vacuum situation like before that made you get into the market?
It was absolutely terrible. It was a big yellow vacuum, and it was like my 5th one I've had in like 2 years. Oh, that's a big furry wand. you can get like.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Right in the face. Okay, but you still keep it around. Is that to remind you how bad it was?
No, I just.
Like whenever you're questioning your purchase, are you ever like, okay, let me just go look at the old one?
That's a really good question because I was actually wondering why I have that because it's not like I use it.
All right, well, we've been talking about this thing. I want to see it.
I want to show it to you.
Well, let's take a look.
Okay.
Okay, we've got everything laid out gun show style here. Yep. Why don't you walk me through some of what all of this crazy stuff is?
Does? Okay. This is for carpets. This is also really good on hardwood floors. This one here is for squeegee, curtains and your blinds and stuff with that. The long stick is for your dryer vent. And then that's for cracks and crevices. And that one in the front there, that's for couches and furniture. And then that's another one to wash your floors with. This one is for the water, for the wet. And then that is the, to blow up mattresses or to use, to use the bag. You use the bag.
Don't use your mouth like a loser.
No, you use that. You
Right.
use the rainbow.
Yeah. Well, let's plug some stuff in and clean some stuff.
You wanna?
Is that why you asked us over here so that I would clean your house for you?
Yes.
I know, okay.
All right, you push it, and it pulls it.
What?
Gone.
I like the light on there too for the all-important
This is my
nighttime in the
favorite.
dark vacuum. This would happen.
Push on it. You can feel it pulling you.
Oh!
See?
I mean, this is just effortless.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, I see how you fooled me into vacuuming your living room too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
you just barely.
Keep going. So you scrub like that,
Yeah.
and then you.
So this is what you use for the dog hair.
Yep.
All right. Let's see what we got in here. Let's look in there because we just use it for a few. Oh. I take back what I said about drinking it. Get in there. Oh, I was in that corner right there. Well, Amy, I thought I was going to come in here and meet a crazy vacuum cleaner lady, but this has turned into a rainbow infomercial here.
Seriously, you'll never have to buy a vacuum again. You'll have this one. In fact, I'm going to put this in a will. In my will, I'm going to leave this vacuum to somebody because
Wow.
it's going to last that long.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming. I'm glad I could show you my rainbow.
That's our show for this week. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, keep up with the stories we're working on, and tell us what you think. I'm Gigi Douban, and we'll see you next time on Alabama Inc.